Josef Mengele, aka the Angel of Death. The name of perhaps the most evil human being to have ever walked the face of the earth. As a medical officer at the Auschwitz extermination camp from April 1943 to January 1945, he repeatedly performed gruesome medical experiments on thousands of prisoners, which often led to their death or left them mutilated. Let's find out more about Josef Mengele, the Angel of Death. It's hard to determine with any accuracy the number of murders that Josef Mengele committed personally or ordered. Taking only one example of his heinous crimes, his participation in the extermination of the Jews of Hungary in the summer of 1944, the total has to be in the hundreds of thousands, as an estimated 400,000 Hungarian Jews were killed there at the time, and Mengele was often the senior officer present and was responsible for selecting which people would be gassed immediately. Mengele was born in Bavaria in 1911. His father had begun the Mengele Company and wanted his son to follow in his footsteps. The future Nazi doctor found the company's work boring and decided to make his own way. He was a pre-med student at the University of Bonn, then earned his PhD in anthropology from the University of Munich in 1935. A year later, he earned a doctorate in medicine, graduating cum laude in medicine. Mengele did not become a Nazi Party member until 1937. But just 1 year later, he joined the infamous SS. He underwent military training with the army in 1938 and was called up for duty only as the campaign in France was winding down in 1940. Soon after this, he applied to join the growing military branch of the SS, the Waffen-SS, as a medic. After only 3 months, he was assigned to the SS Race and Resettlement Office, or the RSHA by its German acronym. At university, he had worked at the Institute for Hereditary Biology and Racial Hygiene in Frankfurt. As you might be able to tell, this institute was started in order to find a medical basis for the Nazi theory of German racial superiority. Mengele was respected in the SS, not just for his 2 doctorates, but because he was again called up for medic duty in 1941 and was awarded twice for his bravery. He was also wounded severely, which put him on reserve. When he returned to the RSHA, he began work with a former college professor of his in the study of heredity and eugenics. Eugenics, the study of the possibility of selectively breeding people in order to achieve certain physical or mental qualities, was popular not only in Germany between the wars, but also in the United States and Great Britain, to name but 2. As you know, the Nazis took eugenics to an entirely different and murderous level. Mengele arrived at Auschwitz in early 1943 and became the chief of the camp's Gypsy section. Gypsies, more properly called Roma today, were also deemed to be inferior by the Nazis and destined for the gas. Those not immediately sent to the gas chambers would either be worked to death or finally sent to the gas chambers when they were too weak to work any longer. Medical care for the Roma was substandard at best, and was administered not by Mengele but by other prisoners. Every 2 weeks or so, Mengele would visit the Gypsy barracks and see who was ill. He would calmly announce that anyone not fit for work in 2 weeks would be sent to the gas. By the time he arrived at Auschwitz, Mengele had been promoted to captain, and as an officer was tasked with the duty of the infamous selection, choosing who would live for a time and those who would be gassed immediately. Most of the officers on duty at Birkenau, as the extermination complex of Auschwitz was known, hated working at the selection. But Mengele liked it. He volunteered for it, and at times replaced his fellow officers who would rather have been doing something else. By all accounts, Mengele showed up at the ramp where trainloads of hundreds or thousands of captives were unloaded, immaculately turned out in his SS uniform. By all accounts, Mengele was calm and cold, but polite, which makes things seem a bit more evil, if that's possible. In the movie Schindler's List, the selection is depicted. The SS officer holding a handkerchief, with his military coat casually flung over his shoulder, is Mengele. At the selection, able-bodied men and teen boys would be sent to the barracks to work. Healthy young women and older girls would be sent to the women barracks area. Pregnant women, the sick, disabled, young children and babies, and the aged were sent to the gas. Mengele made these decisions with a cursory look or a few quick questions. He then would point or gesture in the direction he wanted the new arrivals to go, or be forced to go. Occasionally, Mengele was one of those who dropped the Zyklon B pellets into the gas chambers. At the selection, Mengele also looked for specific kinds of people: twins, little people, and people with 2 different colored eyes specifically. Mengele was particularly interested in twins. What was the role of genetics and other factors that created twins? Given the right circumstances, Mengele and others believed Hitler's blonde-haired and blue-eyed master race could be bred in sets of twins, doubling the population with every pregnancy. He studied little people, then referred to as dwarves, because he wanted to find the exact reason dwarfism happened and to prevent it in the future master race. His fascination with people who had different colored eyes came from a desire to breed human beings with blue eyes, or determine if changes during the lifespan contributed to changes in eye color in these people, and if so, how could the SS medical branch artificially create blue eyes? To those ends, Mengele conducted experiments and experimental surgeries on his captives. Virtually every one of them was done without anesthesia. Organs were removed and exchanged between twins and others. Eyes were injected with dye. Limbs were allowed to grow gangrenous and kill people in order for Mengele and other medical officers to see how long it took to kill them. The sick and those who had grown weak were often given an injection of phenol in the heart or brain to finish them off. Needless to say, not only did Mengele's experiments not yield anything useful, but they were often fatal in and of themselves. He often ordered their organs removed and sent to Berlin for further study. Mengele fled just ahead of the Red Army and eventually made his way to South America like many other wanted Nazis. He lived in Paraguay under an assumed name and worked as an itinerant doctor for a time. He fled Paraguay for Brazil after being tipped off that the Israelis were looking for him. For a time the world's most wanted man, Mengele died of a stroke while swimming in 1979, though the search for him went on until 1985 when his suspected grave was opened and was found to contain the infamous war criminal's remains. After Mengele's body was recovered and his identity verified, his only son, Rolf, now 78, admitted what many people had long supposed, that he had been in relatively constant contact with his evil father for decades. He had sent money to his father and knew generally of his whereabouts for much of the elder Mengele's life, despite decades of denial and condemnation. In 1986, the younger Mengele went on publicity tours of sorts, showing up on The Today Show in the USA, and was the subject of quite a few interviews in newspapers around the world. While he strongly condemned his father's actions and wanted to make sure the world knew that he was nothing like the Angel of Death, Rolf Mengele also admitted that he had never felt the urge to notify anyone of his whereabouts, saying, "I would never betray my father." How exactly he and the Mengele family managed to hide his money transfers and Rolf's meetings with his father over the years is still somewhat of a secret. Before and after his then undiscovered death, Mengele was the subject of a manhunt led by the famed Nazi hunter and Holocaust survivor Simon Wiesenthal and the Israeli government. He was also the subject of hundreds of articles and books, some of them fiction, some of them fact, and some of them a little of both. Two of the more famous books, which were then turned into hit movies, were Ira Levin's The Boys from Brazil, which depicts Mengele conducting DNA experiments in order to create a clone of Adolf Hitler, and William Goldman's Marathon Man, in which a character based on Mengele comes to America to cash out a hoard of diamonds to finance his life on the run. Torture, death, and a manhunt follow. We hope you enjoyed our video. Please leave a comment down below about your thoughts, and don't forget to like today's video. Subscribe to the channel as an offering to the gods of the algorithm, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.